Today's lesson, which is we're entering into the items of mindfulness regarding temple visits. And today we have Wendo James, who will be giving our presentation.
Oops, okay. Let me share the screen again. Okay, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Allison, thank you so much for the amazing meditation that you led us through. It was both relaxing. I love the visualization. I really imagine myself in all the spots that you took us to. So thank you. So today, our class is focusing on items of heedfulness regarding temple visits, and specifically items 1 through 3, referring on page 45 of the Principal Book of Won Buddhism. And so today for my presentation, my goal today was just to break down each of the items and share with you the way I reflected on each of the items. And so I'm interested and curious to see how each of you also contemplated and thought about each of the items. When I think about the items of heedfulness, I always wanted to start with the definition of heedfulness. And the definition of heedfulness in the Principal Book of Won Buddhism states that heedfulness means that state of mind in which we do not forget in each situation to do what we have resolved to do, and not to do what we have resolved not to do when our six sense organs are active. And so when I think about this definition of heedfulness, a couple of terms stick out to me from this definition that caught my attention, and they are state of mind, being really thoughtful of what is our state of mind, and then the idea of not forgetting, followed by the resolution to do, and then the resolution not to do. So these terms stuck out to me when as I reflected on heedfulness, and got me to reflect on, boy, to be heedful means that I really do have to be aware to cultivate a very specific state of mind, a mind that is so aware and so attentive that I don't forget what I resolve to do and what I resolve not to do. And as I thought about that, I thought, wow, that's pretty difficult. It's a very difficult state of mind to have. And so when I think further on heedfulness, and specifically on item number 1, I want to call on anyone in the group to read what item number 1 says. So if someone can just unmute and read for us what item 1 says.
Whenever you come to temple while practicing the items of heedfulness and daily applications, be heedful to engage in questions and answers about each and every aspect of those activities.
Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate it. So when I think of item number 1, I asked myself this question: what does it take to practice item number 1? To be heedful, to engage in questions and answers about each and every aspect of items of heedfulness in our daily applications. All of those items that we vow to be mindful of in our daily practice, coming to temple with those items in mind to engage in questions and answers. And when I thought about this question that I posed to myself, the term that I kept going back to is this concept of vulnerability. And vulnerability came up for me in this item because vulnerability is defined as a willingness to show emotion or to allow one's weakness to be seen or known, a willingness to risk being hurt or even attacked. And so when I think about vulnerability, that term came to mind because it's about coming to temple ready to engage in some sort of self-reflection and inquiry about our progress in practicing the items that we vowed to ourselves to be mindful of, to deepen our practice. And I think that that takes a real level of courage, and it takes a level of honesty to be truly mindful of where am I in my practice. Be mindful to know that sometimes we're not going to be ready to come with questions, but we should be ready to come to temple with questions and ready to receive answers about our own practice. And oftentimes when we come with questions and we seek and we seek answers to those questions, sometimes it may feel uncomfortable because there's an ability to feel comfortable about not failing. And so the opposite for me is true about being comfortable to fail and to accept my limitations as a human being, to know that I may not have been successful in truly being mindful in practicing consistently the items that I vow to practice in my daily life. And oftentimes that's been the case. And so when I think about this, it's having an ability to, as I think Reverend Song and Reverend you've told us before, is having the checking mind, is being able to check our mind at all times of the day, but specifically when we're able to prepare to come to temple, to check how we're doing, and to come to temple with this mind of sincerity, so that we can truly practice the first item of heedfulness, is to really come to temple with questions and answers about our daily about our items of mindfulness and daily application. And so to me, as I think about it, the temple serves as the sangha of support and encouragement. And so that support and encouragement is really critical to our ability to deepen our ability to question our practice, and to come to temple with questions and to seek answers about how we're doing in our items of heedfulness and daily application. So the idea of vulnerability stood out to me with this one, is to really just be ready to give it your all. And that can be a scary thing sometimes, when we're honest and self-reflective. And so the article of questioning to me is really connected to the first item of heedfulness for temple visits. And as you recall from our other Canon 1 class, when we studied the four articles, the article of questioning is defined as wanting to discover and know what we do not know about human affairs and universal principles, which is the motive force that reveals what we are ignorant of when we try to accomplish anything. And so for me, this article of questioning is really at the center of coming to temple with an eagerness and a desire to want to learn, to want to discover what we do not know, to deepen about our own practice in our items of mindfulness for daily application. So this is a connection that I felt strong about the first item. Can someone read item number 2?
If you have awakened to some matter, be heedful to report that awakening to a spiritual mentor and to obtain his or her appraisal.
Thank you so much for reading that, Diane. So as I think about item number 2, I again pose the same question. Well, what does it take to practice this item, to be heedful to report awakenings to a spiritual mentor, or to obtain his or her appraisal. And what kept coming up to me was this idea of the power of relationships. And I first want to start by saying that when I think about awakening, it requires some level of attention and awareness of our mind. It requires us that we must be able to identify some sort of new learning or understanding to be awakened. And so awakening can arise by reading scripture, engaging in Dharma study, meditation, even through our life experiences and circumstances. And so as we gain some level of awakening, it's important to know that awakening is not time bound. It can happen at any time and oftentimes when we least expect it. But when I think about this item, I think about how important it is to select a spiritual mentor. For it says, if we've awakened to some matter, we have to be heedful to report that awakening to a spiritual mentor and to obtain his or her appraisal. So it's important for each of us to select a spiritual mentor. And I think that that really strongly begins with building a relationship with that spiritual advisor or that spiritual mentor. So the stronger, for me, the relationship is with the spiritual mentor, the more we would feel comfortable to discuss those experiences that arise in our practice. And we would be more open to receiving guidance if we have that relationship with a spiritual mentor and a spiritual advisor. And so I really think of a spiritual mentor and an advisor much like an athletic coach. As athletes, we even professional athletes who are at the highest level of the sport still have coaches. They still have mentors, advisors, people who guide them and give them feedback about how they're developing and how they are really mastering the skill of the sport. And I think the spiritual mentor and the spiritual advisor plays that role. They are the coaches, the mentors, those that provide us direct feedback, the experts of the field. And I think it's important. I think that that's why that item of mindfulness says that if we've awakened to some matter, we need to report that to a spiritual mentor to obtain his or her appraisal. The appraisal is that critical feedback. It's the guidance. It's when a spiritual advisor, mentor can tell us, yes, we're on the right path, or we may not be on the right path, even though we think we're on the right path. And as a student, as an athlete, we need to hear that mentorship and that advice from the coach and from the spiritual mentor. So I think of the relationship is very critical in this space. And as I reflect on this item, I thought about my own development. When I first started Won Buddhism about a year ago, I didn't have a relationship with a spiritual mentor or a spiritual advisor in Won Buddhism. I would say that Reverend Grace was the first mentor or spiritual advisor, and then Reverend Yu through this course. And I think over time, over the course of Canon 1, I began to feel more comfortable and began to feel able to build a relationship with Reverend Grace and Reverend Yu. And then it gave me the confidence to search a local spiritual mentor, and that's Reverend Dosung, who's here in the LA temple. And so then I developed that relationship with Reverend Dogen, and over time, we've begun that relationship where I feel that I can come to Reverend Dogen for any question that I have, or any type of advice that I need that just comes up in life. And I feel so comfortable that we often text each other throughout the week. He'll check in and say, how are you doing? How's your studying going? How's work going? How's your meditation practice going? So it gives me that strength to know that when I feel that I have some type of awaken to some matter, I can go to Reverend Dogen to obtain appraisal or feedback on how I'm doing. And so I relate this item to Article of Zeal. And remember, our Article of Zeal is a mind that heroically moves forward which is the motive force that encourages and pushes us along when we try to accomplish anything. And so I think we have to have some level of zeal to be able to push ourselves to have those relationships, and then to be able to report how our practice and our development is moving in order to gain that feedback, that appraisal from the spiritual mentor or advisor. And so to conclude, moving on to item number 3, if someone can also read item 3 for us.
If you encounter a matter that raises a special doubt, be heedful to submit it to a spiritual mentor and gain the awakening of understanding.
Thank you, Christine. And so similar to the first and the second item, I also asked myself that same question. Well, what about item 3? What does it take for me to practice item 3? To be heedful to submit special doubts to a spiritual mentor and gain the awakening of understanding. And so what kept coming back to me with item 3 is this idea of trust. Is when we think about doubt, we often think about a level of uncertainty. There's some hesitancy to believe something. There's a level of distrust. And so I asked myself, but okay, there's doubt, but what is a special doubt? And it's a question I would pose to all of us tonight. What is a special doubt? And what I think about special doubt is maybe it's something that weighs on our shoulders heavily, that's constantly plaguing our mind, that we're just really uncertain about, or that we stay confused about, and we go back and forth like a pendulum. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and we just don't know for sure, and it troubles us. So I imagine a special doubt to be something like that. But in order to deal with the special doubt, I think we need to have some type of trust. And trust is defined as some reliance on integrity, a reliance on strength, on ability, this idea of being sure of a person or a thing, of confidence. And so here, that trust is that spiritual mentor, is a spiritual advisor, that spiritual mentor is strong enough for us to be able to submit our special doubt to. We should be able to release the tension of our shoulders and our mind that really troubles us, and really just surrender. And so the word submit stood out to me in item number 3. If you encounter a matter that raises special doubt, be heedful to submit it to a spiritual mentor. So submit to me encompasses this level of trust, because I have to surrender. I don't know, and so I'm seeking guidance. And so to surrender to someone with greater knowledge and wisdom is that spiritual mentor and that advisor. And so in order to really practice this item, we have to develop a trust with our spiritual mentor. We have to trust that mentor will guide our understanding and clarify any special doubts that arise in our practice. And so Dharma service is often a special place to clarify special doubts. In reflecting on my own experience on Sundays, though we're a small community in LA, we feel comfortable with one another, that we often come to service with raising the different levels of doubts that different practitioners come to service with. And it's really refreshing to know that we've developed a space that we can truly be honest and support one another. And Reverend Dogen does lead us through an exercise of talking things out with one another, and then he ultimately goes back to scripture and then connects our experiences with scripture and helps us make sense of that. So I attribute that experience to item number 3. And so item number 3 to me goes back to the article of belief. And belief means to have faith, which is a motive force that settles the mind when we try to accomplish anything. So I go back to, I need to really have a level of faith that when I entrust that special doubt at temples, at our Dharma service, that I will be able to gain some settling of the mind with the guidance of a spiritual mentor and advisor. But ultimately, I think it goes back to having a level of effort. I think that each of these items, item 1, 2, and 3, requires us to exert a level of physical and mental power in order to truly practice items 1, 2, and 3. And ultimately, that effort leads us to the article of dedication, which I know, Reverend, you talked to us many times about, is this unremitting state of mind, which is the motive force that will achieve the objective when we try to accomplish anything. So to conclude, I asked myself, what does it take to practice these 3 items of heedfulness regarding temple visits? I think about being able to be vulnerable, but relying on the article of questioning. I think about the power of building relationships and developing that zeal to do that. I think about the trust that we need to have in a spiritual mentor and really relying on the article of faith to get there. And I think about having a sincere effort to make all of these things happen through the article of dedication. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Wendell. Fascinating that I'm so glad you linked it, connected it with the articles developed from the 8 articles. But just opening it up to the group, after hearing the presentation, was there any reflections that you had? Yes. Yes, Diane.
I just wanted to thank you, Wendell. It was a great presentation. You really delved into those instructions in a way that surprised me. You really broke them down but you asked the right questions of them, I think, and it was very interesting. I want to thank you for that. Mentioning the vulnerability, which implies humility. Everything you spoke about really implies the necessity to be humble, and your emphasis on the relationship with the mentor, so important, and the submitting, surrendering, which is beautiful points that you brought up. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, go ahead, Brenda.
Mine is very similar to Diane's, but I really enjoyed the perspective that you took, that you were able to, I feel like, make it a much more personal, I don't know if that's the right word, but a much more development of the self, not of you, of one going to temple to experience something, but rather it's a person's my language is gone, but like their own efforts to become better. So again, I just appreciate the perspective.
Thank you, Brenda.
Yes, very easy to understand, James. And I always appreciate it when someone can interweave a particular teaching in with other teachings. It shows the interconnectedness of the various teachings. And, sometimes I wonder, for example, if everything is contained in the one in Sota-san's transmission verse, then why do we need to know anything else? And the reason might be that when we take it from all these different angles, it's just much easier to understand. So combined with your personal reflections, it just makes it easy to understand. So I appreciate that.
Thanks for the feedback, John.
I think Christine.
Thank you, James. Yes, that was really just a very good explanation of those first 3 items. And I have to say, in this time of COVID, what we've developed at One Dharma Klaverek is a women's group that meets every Sunday, and we often watch the service on Zoom, but then we're able to check in with each other and be mentors to each other. And I feel so fortunate that we have that. Occasionally a minister will come and be with us, and other times it's just a group of women, and the size varies every Sunday, but we're open, we're honest, we're understanding with each other, we're comfortable in speaking about our limitations. So all the things that you mentioned, I feel like we put into practice as best we can. And I just know that Kathy's the one who leads this group, and we're so lucky to have her because we can meet and do that and keep up with our practice every week. So thank you, James. It was a great talk, and it made me feel very grateful, as Allison said, very grateful to have all the teachings and the mentors. And I consider each one of you here a mentor to me. And I think Reverend Yu actually said that when we listened to his talk, that your mentor can be the person in the next bubble to you, or the next, whoever, that that is there for you. So yeah, it was great.
Wow, sounds powerful, Christine. Thank you for sharing the women's group. I wish much success to the group.
Okay, Kathy, and then Isabel. I think I saw Kathy.
I'm so sorry that my video is off. I just don't want to be kicked off of Zoom. I know I already said something, James, but I really loved how you so clearly took us through the items of heedfulness in temple visits or mindfulness. I know everyone has said that, but it really sort of brings a lot of life and heart. And you said a word for me, vulnerability, that is one of my favorite words in the whole world. And I think that was really key. And because it's not easy to come and sometimes I always go to Reverend Yu for probably everything. And but there's, and Grace sometimes too. But it's not easy. It's not easy to come to class. We have Reverend Park as well, but not easy to come to class and say, or come to temple and say, I have this question, not always. So that it's so valuable to remember that vulnerability, and to the ministers set such a wonderful example that we can trust. So I'm really grateful that you mentioned that, and the whole presentation was beautiful. And also, Christine, I just want to quickly say that thank you for mentioning Women's Circle. And I wish that every temple had that, and we all lead each other. There's so many of us here that are in this circle, and it's such a gift. You're all such a gift, as is this class. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Isabel.
Okay. Well, I just really enjoyed it too. I just wanted to say that you're such a great teacher, because you really took us through every step, as Kathy was saying, we've all been saying, but your technique in teaching is impressive. And I think you're going to be a great teacher of Won Buddhism when you continue to learn the Dharma. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Isabel. It's a privilege to receive that feedback.
Well, Wando, your profession is an educator, correct? Like your background too?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so thank you, everybody. We're going to continue. Thank you so much for that presentation, Wando, because it really weaves nicely. I'm going to be focusing just more on the relationship between what we learned before, the items of heedfulness in our daily applications, And then right now we're doing regarding temple visit. What is the connection? Because sometimes we can just focus on one, focus on the next, and then not see the connection between both of them. So let me just share my screen with all of you. Yeah. Okay, so everyone can see that? Is that clear? Okay, so I wanted to start by also just reflecting on what our motive is in Won Buddhism. So if someone were to ask you, what is the motive of studying Won Buddhism? What is the goal or what is the purpose? This is very clearly stated in our founding motive of the teaching, which is to lead all sentient beings who are drowning in the turbulent sea of suffering to a vast and immeasurable paradise by expanding spiritual power and conquering material power. So what's important here is to notice, he uses the expression sentient beings. It's not lead all humans. He's including everything, nature, animals, insect, all of that, to a vast and immeasurable paradise, not somewhere else, but here on earth where we live. Not by ourselves, but together. So going back to just imagining the time when Sotaesan appeared, in the late 19th century, very poor area in Korea. But he went through a very, strenuous spiritual journey, as you all know, the story of Sotaesan. And upon gaining awakening, the first thing he did was he didn't go out and start getting disciples right away. He didn't start creating a scripture. The first thing he did actually is, for those of you who know the story, at that time he was so into the samadhi that he did not take care of himself. They thought that he was a sick person, so people started avoiding him. The first thing he did, and this is in the history of Won Buddhism, it says that he looked at himself. He started to look at his grown out nails. He cut his nails, he washed his face, he combed his hair, he washed himself up, right? And so that is, represents the spirit of Won Buddhism, which is we start with ourself. Because as we mentioned in previous classes, we have to see ourselves kind of within concentric circles, that I am part of my family, which is a part of a community, which is part of a country, which is part of the world. Right? So no person lives on an island. No person lives on an island. We live all together. Interdependence. You heard that expression before. We're interconnected. So each of my thoughts, my actions, my speech, all have an impact. And we live, because we live together, we're going to face many, many sensory conditions, both positive, neutral, negative. Even thinking about today, thinking of your day, how many things did you come into contact with? How many times, what kind of minds arose for you, right? So Sotaesan was saying, we need a practice to help us gain freedom of mind. Within where we're living, we need to get the freedom of mind, right? And this is why we have this practice. This is why we are doing the daily training and the fixed term training. But his emphasis was, even back then, he says, we are not going to do this alone. This is an important thing. We are not going to do this alone. This is actually a picture of in the formative years of Won Buddhism, when they were doing the Embankment Project. They're creating a financial basis, right, for what would later become Won Buddhism. But they didn't just do this, they actually trained the mind. This is an actual picture of one of the retreats. Right. And one of the beautiful things about Won Buddhism is the training was done equally for both men and women. Women were trained exactly the same, and it's recorded in the journals. They kept actually a record of all the activities. Okay? So from very early on, we can see Sotaesan's emphasis on the power of coming together, doing your individual practice, but actually coming together and doing the practice, right? And this is why we have this, items of heedfulness regarding temple visits. But let's connect it to what we've been learning. What is the relationship between what we learned, daily applications? You said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we have 6 items for temple visits. What's the connection? This is not just a haphazard, teaching. Sotya-san in many ways was scientific. He was a scientist. This is based on principle. Principles are timeless, universal, self-evident. They operate whether or not we accept or understand them, and I'll explain this further. But this relationship between daily application and temple visits is based on principle. And everyone understands what a principle is. A principle is, for example, simply put, if you consume a lot of junk food, what happens internally? Your internal organs react, right? That's a principle, whether you like it or not, that's what happens to our body. Same with farming as well. If you farm, you have to farm during a certain time in order to reap the harvest at a certain time, right? Because there's a certain principle that functions. The same applies to the principle of self-power and other power. And this is the principle that Master Sotya-san bases this relationship on, is that there's self-power and other power. And he defines self-power and other power in the chapter of prayer. It says, once people are born into this world and engage in life, they have self-power and other power. Self-power is the basis of other power, and other power is the basis of self-power. So think about just the day that you were born, for example, when you're in the womb, you still need that other power of the mother. Even when you come out of the womb, someone has to receive you. And as you grow, we need that caregiver to nurture us, to teach us, right? To take care of us. So throughout our life, we have, if you reflect from the moment that we're born through our life, there is always this self-power and other power that exists. Even in this very moment, as we breathe in the oxygen and we give out the carbon dioxide, there's that mutual life-giving principle that exists. So if we were to see self-power and other power, this principle, the items of heedfulness and daily applications that we just did is your self-power. Okay, this is the things, as Wanda was saying, heedfulness is what you resolve to do or not to do. These items, applications are not something that the temple says, do it. No, this is what I decide to do. I will decide to be mindful with sound thought and make right mindful choices. I will decide to recite the Buddha's name in the evening or in the morning. This is really based on self-power. But as what Sotya-san is saying, self-power alone is not enough. We need that other power. And that's why we have this regarding temple visits. We're bringing the self-power and other power together. And that is why it's so important to engage with your Dharma friends and Dharma teachers, to go to temple, right? So if people say to you, why do you go to temple? It's like, well, somebody told me it's great. Actually, this is based on a principle. I'm gaining the other power that I need to support my self-power, right? So there is this mutual beneficial relationship that is going on when we practice daily applications and when we go to the temple, right? So in this doubt's clarified, he actually explains it. What's the relationship, right, between daily applications and temple visits? And the founding master said, the items of heedfulness and daily applications are a rapid method that enables one to practice consistently while living in human society, regardless of whether one is learned or ignorant, a man or woman, young or old, wholesome or unwholesome, noble or common. The items of heedfulness regarding temple visits are a method that complements and points to the items of heedfulness and daily applications. What's very important here is it's a rapid method, first of all. It's right in your daily life. You're doing it within human society, right? And this is always the emphasis of Won Buddhism, is that practice is your life, life is your practice. But not only that, this items of heedfulness regarding temple visits complements your daily applications. So think about all the things that we do in life, right? And during your life, you're doing your daily application practice, and you come up against challenges, sensory conditions, you have a certain awakening or certain doubt. And then what do? You get together with your community, the other power, and you get the wisdom from other people, right? You get the opinions of other people. You get clarification from your teacher, right? And then what happens is then you're preparing yourself for when you're with self-power again, right? So the daily application during your daily life is your work. And then when you get together with your community, you're actually enhancing your daily practice through question and answering, through clarification. And this is so important because the mind, as we all know, is so subtle. It is so subtle that it exists when you take hold of it. It disappears when you let it go. How can a person cultivate one's mind without checking it, right? So another reason why he created the system is so that we can realize this checking mind, this checking mind. So it's important to talk about what the temple is, because some people get stuck with temple as the temple building, the structure. But the temple is so much more than that. And this is actually from one of our masters, Kaksan Nim. And he said that the temple is kind of like a school that teaches a practitioner how to use their mind well. And our textbook is The Essential Ways of Human Life and of Practice. So that's threefold study, fourfold grace, 4 essentials, 8 articles. It should be a place that directs us to the path to Buddhahood, a place to deepen our vow to liberate all sentient beings. It's the hub of world peace, the spring of societal transformation. I love this expression. It's the dry cleaner for the mind. Think of it as the dry cleaner for the mind. A place to cultivate good actions and merit. Right? So when we go to the temple, let's think beyond the temple structure and think about the temple as any place that has these characteristics. So your home can be a temple, right? Your workplace you can make into your temple if you view it this way. It's a place for us to re-energize ourselves, right? So practitioners, what is the purpose of attending a temple? It's learning the Dharma of how to use our mind well. Our temple helps us to manifest our innate wisdom through questioning and answering. Through group meditation, we attain the stability, right, of mind. As a practitioner, attending temple means we walk the path of Buddhahood and we learn how to requite the many graces in our life. Right? Learn how to live a happy life and to share one's experiences with others and receive advice from Dharma teachers and friends. So you might ask, well, when you talk about spiritual mentor, did Master Sotasan have a spiritual mentor? And actually, yes, this is, I think, a beautiful quote. And a disciple had asked, someone came and asked me who the great master's teacher was. I answered that our great master attained great enlightenment on his own, did not have a personal teacher. The founding master said, in the future, if there are people who again ask who my teacher is, answer that I am their teacher, they are my teacher, right? Another disciple asked, in the great master's Dharma lineage, which Buddha was your foundational teacher? And he replied, although one great era is giving way to another, Shakyamuni Buddha remains my foundational teacher. So as Wondo was saying too, yes, even coaches have their spiritual mentors. Master Sotasan was the same. He had a spiritual mentor, but he's also saying that you are my teacher in many ways as well. Right? But the importance of a spiritual mentor, of finding that spiritual mentors, and it doesn't just have to be one either. Actually one of my mentors said, have several, because people have different viewpoints and perspectives. And the great thing about spiritual mentors is that for many of them, they have the ability to see wider, to see deeper, and to see further. And that's very important because many times, I'm just going to use this image. I won't read the actual quote, but the image is here. We're blind to many of our ignorances, right? I should read it. It said, the founding master asked, why does that lamplight illuminate all directions except directly underneath it? And Seongyu replied, the light of that lamp shines upward, illuminating the far distance. The lampstand, which is right below, makes everything underneath dim. If we take this as a simile, this is just like certain people who are well aware of others' faults but are blind to their own mistakes. The reason is because when they look at other people, there's nothing blocking their view. So they can directly look upon the strengths and weaknesses and good or bad points. But when they look at themselves, the shadow of the sign of I covers the light of wisdom. So that's why teachers are so important, because they help us to really break through our ignorance, right? And another reason why we need a spiritual mentor is because we have different spiritual capacities. And I'm just going to, you may have heard of this before, but they have a high, medium, and low. It's very easy to fall into the medium spiritual capacity. And this is a person who neither comprehends with precision nor is totally ignorant. And so being unable to resolve one's doubt is always weighing the Dharma in one's teacher. So this is on our path, a spiritual capacity that one can fall into if there is not that exchange with a spiritual mentor or Dharma friends. And so Master Sutta-san was warning, he said, the people who fall into that medium spiritual capacity, most difficult to guide, because they take the Dharma lightly, they start looking down on their teachers, right? So it's very difficult for them to experience success, right? So this is another reason why we constantly should engage in question and answer to get appraisal, to receive appraisal, right? So just to summarize, when we think about the items of application or regarding temple visits, just keep in mind our objective, or what is the vision, and then understanding the relationship between my daily practice and temple visit, which is based on the principle of self-power and other power. Reflect on, the importance of attending a temple, right? Engaging in question and answer, receiving appraisal for awakening and doubts, and the importance of a spiritual mentor and Dharma friends. They help us avoid convoluted paths. They shed light on our ignorance, and they help us to avoid falling into that medium spiritual capacity. So, yes, I know that was a lot, but I just want to make sure that connection was very clear. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, and yes, Tiffany.
Just a quick question, Reverend Song. So I know that you created that PowerPoint, but is that something that could be made available perhaps? Because it would just be a nice accompaniment.
Sure, I will send that out to everybody. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
Yeah, it was
welcome.
a wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
And if I may, if no one minds, I do have one question. I'll make it brief. So the questioning and inquiry that you mentioned in the temple, what does it mean for those who are able to go to temple and ingest the Dharma, but not necessarily have questions right then and there, but may, as they experience life in community inside or outside the temple, what sort of space or guidance could be given?
Yeah, so this is the beauty of our practice, is we have so many tools and resources to help us keep track of all the questions that we may have. So just because we don't have a question on Sunday does not mean that we should not engage in question answer during the week. So I definitely use journaling as a way to record, what is my awakening? So even to help us clarify what that question could be. And because it's interesting, some teachers, they won't give you the answer right away. right? Even if you ask, they'll say, actually, that's something that, why don't you contemplate it for a while? So recording it, and then when you have a chance, now that we have technology is to reach out to the teacher, to reach out to your Dharma friends. I had a teacher once say to me, get 3 appraisals for each of your questions or your awakenings. Get one from a teacher, get one from your Dharma friend, and one from yourself. And then see what the different perspectives are, right? So Sutta-san, and many teachers, they say, when you're receiving a question and answer, even in our scripture says, advise different people and then see which one resonates with you and makes sense to you, right? But another thing that Wando had mentioned in his presentation is that it requires that level of trust. I think that's very important, that there is that trust, because based on that, if you can eventually find that teacher where you can fully be yourself and just tell exactly what it is that you're struggling with, being okay, leaning into that vulnerability, and saying, and knowing that that teacher is not there to judge, but that teacher is truly there to guide and to help. And so when you get into that space and that relationship, that's when spiritual growth starts to happen. But many times there's that kind of wall saying, if I say this, oh, what will they think? Or if they say this, am I a bad practitioner? There's that fear of judging. But once you cultivate a relationship where there is none of that worry anymore, when you completely trust and know that what that teacher says to you, even though you may not agree, but like what Reverend you was saying last week about his teacher saying to him, well, that's not your path. Once you have that trust, then even if that may not, you may not agree at first, you trust them enough to know that they are thinking in your best interest and that they're seeing something that you're not seeing. And so you trust to make that decision. Yeah. But it's wonderful because most wonderful teachers that I meet, it's interesting. Sometimes they'll tell you, they'll guide you, but they'll try to get you to make your decision. They'll say, well, I think this could be it, but they'll get you to finally make that decision. So it's not like, do it, It's more like, well, did you ever think about this?
Reverend Nam. Yes.
Right. Reverend, did you want to add anything to that? Oh, microphone.
Thank you so much. I really learned a lot from James as well as from Grace. We are not studying the 6 items of mindfulness regarding temple visit. We are actualizing these 3 items. Why people cause a traffic accident? Probably he was not mindful to see the stop sign, or he's not mindful to see the oncoming vehicles, etc. That's the reason why traffic accident happens. If we go to the temple for Dharma service, if you think you don't grow, if your life is all the same, or you are not joyful in your daily life as well as going to the service, it is because you are not actualizing or observing 6 items of mindfulness. So when people come to the One Dharma Center, I ask, why do you join our Sangha? Why do you come to the Dharma service? Many people say, I would like to deepen my practice in a group setting. I can be more deeply absorbed in meditation, or I would like to learn Dharma, etc. That's okay. Going to the temple is a far deeper meaning of that. So as James and Grace beautifully presented, the main purpose is we can open ourselves and get appraiser from our Dharma friends and our teacher. That's the main purpose. But it says whenever you come to the temple while practicing the items of mindfulness in daily activity, this is the preceding context. If you don't practice at all, you don't have much things to ask. You don't care whether my practice or life is evaluated or not. So as Grace emphasized, your self-power comes first. Just like we cannot see the back of our head, many times we think we are walking on the proper Dharma path, but we are not quite sure we are walking on the shortcut or using the detour. Even very mature, not just a mature practitioner, enlightened teacher can be walking on the misleading path. As we know, there are hundreds of thousands of levels of awakening. For example, one of my teachers, she had awakening in her early 40s. She's a practicing Zen Buddhism. She's not one Buddhist minister. One day, in order to meet her teacher, who is a very famous Zen master in Korean Zen Buddhism, she was climbing the Dongaksa monastery located in Gyeongsan mountain. The monastery is almost on the top of the mountain. While she was hiking, she's a very spiritual person. She has her mind and heart is always open and communicating with the universe. She heard an inner voice, a voice from the universe. Your mind should be as deep as this valley, and your mind should be as high as this mountain. Pretty good word. She received the inner voice. So while she was hiking to the top of the mountain, like 1 or 2 hours, she contemplated on what does that mean? What's the lesson of that voice of the universe? And then when she arrived to the monastery, and she asked to her teacher, what does that mean? Do you know what that Zen master answered to her? You need to come back to your koan. That voice is not important. You can be misled, you can be fooled by those kind of voice or those things. Just like when we meditate, whatever arises in our mind, we need to come back to our breath. Her teacher asked, you need to come back your Quan, you're studying contemporary. This is a very small example, but even enlightened teacher can be misled. Our second head Dharma master, our third head Dharma master also needed a teacher, our founding master. I'd like to tell my story. Some years after I was ordained, I discovered living a minister's life is sometimes very ordinary, plain, and boring. And I thought about that. I better have a girlfriend. And I happened to meet a very beautiful woman. She looked like a model. And I started to like her. And I thought to myself, it is good, or at least not a big deal, to date from time to time, not just once or twice in a month. But I was quite sure I'm not doing anything unethical, etc. It helps to refresh my mind. That's my thought. And one day, I thought I told what I felt or what I planned to my teacher. She was silent, and she said she will give me the answer the next day. I was very anxious. When I watched the movie, some movie, romantic movie, is that true? Some woman, right before the wedding day, they are very anxious. Is he the right guy? What would happen after marriage? I was very anxious. What my teacher would guide me. The next day, she said to me, she didn't say yes or no. She said, if I meet her, I become a little involved in some romantic relationship with her, then I will turn up in this path. If I don't see her, I just let go of all my thoughts, plans, and emotions, then I will walk on another path. Even though she didn't say yes or no, it was very, very clear to me. I should choose the latter path. I was misled. I was deluded. I fooled myself. That's why Buddha said, do not trust your thoughts. Do not trust your own thoughts. So I stepped back and watched my mind and my situation. I think it's really common sense. I better let go of her. From that day, I was not bothered by her thoughts. From time to time, I thought about her, but not bothered at all. It is not necessarily by the power of your teacher. It is the power of your being very candid, very open to yourself. It says that 지도인, it's translated as a spiritual mentor. 지도인 is not the minister. Sometimes it does not have to be your mentor. It can be your wife, it can be your boss. That's why they say when students are ready, teachers appear. So touch your face with your hands. How many masks do you wear? On the outside, we don't wear any mask. But on the inside, whether you are a beginning practitioner, mature practitioner, we may wear many layers. We pretend to do. So our job is to remove each and every layer of the mask of pretense. So if our teacher is next to you, it's a very, very easy, very, very easy. So during the Dharma, in a small group session, you can discuss that. So our third head Dharma master said, if you don't have a teacher, you are a spiritual orphan. We have to search for that. Venerable Desan said, even though you don't offer prayer, some people are very practice-oriented. They love meditation, not offering prayer or chanting. But you better offer prayer to meet a very good teacher. But the foundation is you need to be ready and ready to be open. So report each and every aspect of your practice activity means you are not supposed to hide. Then your parents, your Dharma friends, all would become your teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Yu. Thank you for that. So I will open up the rooms now, and there's a lot to discuss, just even sharing how you've been, what your community means to you, or what kind of questions come up for you, or your practice engaging in Q&A with Dharma friends and Dharma teachers. This is a great opportunity to learn from each other of how you're practicing these items. So I will open up the rooms now. Welcome back, everyone. I would love to hear from some of the groups. I just feel was probably a lot of fruitful discussions there, much to learn. So I'd like to start with Allison's group. I think Allison, Christine, Bob. If you could share anything with the rest of us.
Well, we sort of went around and got off topic a little bit from time to time, but I think that we're all of a great mind that your talk and James's talk tonight is very appropriate and made us think about our own motivation in going and participating in temple visits. And I think that your favorite word, vulnerable, is something that strikes very sincerely with us, that when you have a sangha and groups in a temple situation, and in other classes that you take, it makes your practice so much fuller and deeper and moving you along in your practice and your road to Buddhahood. And of course, I had to very sadly say, well, I don't have Dharma groups, we don't have temple, we don't have physical temple, but what we do is that we have Reverend Bupp, and he is my spiritual advisor. And when I have questions and I need help, then I go to him, and I feel very safe and am able to be vulnerable with him. And he will never, ever make me feel uncomfortable. So I personally feel very fortunate. And Christine and Bob spoke so highly of all of their mentors and teachers and their even and our classmates here in this class, how critical it is to our continued practice and development as we move forward. So I think did I do okay, guys?
They both give you the thumbs up. Thank you, Allison. That was wonderful. Thank you for that. I had talked Diane's group. I think it was Diane, and there was two other people. I think is Isabel. Who else was in Diane's group? Was it Jay? Anyone like to share from that group?
Well, we talked about Reverend used words about the many masks that we wear. That really struck all of us, the three of us, and it's a wonderful, profound thing. And it's correlation to finding a teacher when we are ready for it, because we are ready to take our masks off. We're ready to be candid, and we're ready to show who we really are to a teacher and be able to really have a relationship that is productive. So we went on to discuss, Jay brought up the question of the koans, which were our koans, and what she was working on in terms of a koan. And she asked me what my koan was, and my koan is emptiness is form, form is emptiness, and it has been that since I read the Heart Sutra. And so she talked about her work with the Heart Sutra, which she's working with 3 languages. Is it 3 languages, Jay? Korean and Chinese and English, right? And how that gives her many perspectives on the same. It's very important to do translations. I know that from experience too. I don't think Diane talked about her koan.
I did, but it was in agreement with Jay, and our questions were more about what is soul, what is spirit, what is the self, what is no self, what continues, if anything, after death, what reincarnates. So along those lines, those are our explorations, right, Jay? Yeah.
Yes, and I was talking about my experiences in meditation, what I have learned during my meditations regarding that very difficult topic, that very profound and difficult to find an answer for topic. So you actually caught us in the middle of a sentence, so we were not able to finish the thought. So this is as far as I can take it, but it was very fascinating to talk about this. Thank
We
you.
also talked about our attachment to ourselves, to existing, and how hard it's to let go of that.
and not wanting to accept whatever it is that is instead of a self and a soul because of attachments to ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Isabel and Diane and Jay. Sounds like you have many doubts and questions that you can now discuss later on with your Dharma friends and teachers. Wonderful. Excellent. Patty, Tiffany Wando, is there anything?
Yep, I was voluntold by my group. Be mindful of time, but I think what I've taken away, and please, Patty and Wando, if I miss anything, jump in. We had a very beautiful and heart-centering conversation about the role of mentors and spiritual teachers. Similar to what Isabel and Allison mentioned, we talked very briefly about the idea of masks and of how do you focus on the practice inside and outside of a building. And the idea of having someone be present in your life who is also very much human, very much fragile as you are, informs your practice and your decisions and the Dharma that you use to guide your practice. And through different examples throughout our lives, because the three of us are on different levels of relationships in building, our Dharma communities in our respective homes, it felt very much as if there was that cherished piece of trust and tranquility that you look for because it's difficult to find in everyday life. And even in the process of building or going many years with someone, there is a resonance of everything that you have to process. You're never far away from your thoughts. And it's because your mentor helps to create those thoughts and to create you to be a better person. So that's kind of what we took from that, and encouraging each other to continue on that path and being transparent, because it gets you back to, as James would say, being naked and open. And we had a brief conversation about not streaking. We went off the path for a minute, but it really was about your original nature, and your spiritual mentor reminds you of that, even in difficult times, of just how beautiful and perfect you are. So I don't know if I missed anything, folks.
You did amazing, Tiffany. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Streaking. I'm going to tell that to Reverend Yu. Okay. And the last group here, Brenda, Ida, John, Kathy. Was there anyone who'd like to share?
I'll take a stab at it because I haven't talked much, but please, if I leave anything out, jump in, guys. I think we spent some time talking about building trust and how that helps us to ask questions. And I specifically really appreciated this evening's talks, both of them, about the fact that how we can expect no judgment, that the answers that are provided to us, or the answers, or actually the responses that can perhaps lead us into different ways of thinking, expanding the possibilities, are just very reassuring to know that there will be, no, this is what you must do. I think, oh, where are you? John talked about how often the guidance that's provided helps us to return to our meditation, to return to our awareness, so that, what did you say? It was so lovely that our own prajna can arise. And Kathy talked, I thought was really wonderful, talked about resistance and how when we can overcome our resistance to some of the suggestions or guidance that we receive from our Dharma friends, that we actually do get to move to a higher level of practice and understanding. And that was really very encouraging. And I thought In particular, Brenda asked a wonderful, difficult question in terms of what we always want to ask. I'm sure every one of us has asked this question before, during, and later. What am I supposed to be doing? How do I do this? And I think that actually, Brenda, if I might say, I thought that we all kind of took a stab at what this evening's discussion was about, and that was to hear your question, to offer thoughts, no judgment, about how you might go about working that out. And, you know, I hope that we can all remember how to be this open and supportive as we move forward in our practice. So anyone else? What did I leave out?
It looks like they're all saying good job. Yeah, Kathy says thank you, Ida. Wonderful. Okay. So this was actually, I learned so much from all of you, and it reminds me of the power of community. So thank you for that, and allowing us to actually just share our experiences together. I think this is a good space to do that. Now, next week, we will be moving into item number 4, which is be heedful to set aside in advance each year the training fees for a Sun retreat, meditation retreat, so that you may pursue specialized practice in a Sun center. So is there anyone who'd like to present this one for next week? Diane, thank you. Oh, guided meditation. Is there anyone would like to do that guided meditation? Even if you've done it before, you can volunteer again. Or if anyone would like to.
Oh, Christine raised her hand first.
I think Christine is saying, John, you do it. No, right?
No, if somebody else hasn't done it, they can do it. I mean, I would do it all the time. I love doing that, but I think everybody needs to have a turn. So if they want to do it.
John
definitely.
hasn't done it yet, right? John has it? Okay, we'll give it to John. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for, yes, I will definitely turn to you, Christine, for that. Yay! Okay, community. All right, temple members. Today was good session. Everyone have a very good night, and we will see you next week. Have a good night, everyone.
Right.
Bye. See you.